Happy holidays. Welcome to the huddle. As you see, no Ninja this week. Our boy's off on holidays. Good for him. Deserved. Tony Farmer, myself, producer Steve McLean. Tony, happy holidays, buddy. Looking forward to the time off now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Merry Christmas to you, man. We got some NBA action. We got some NFL action. College football in full swing. It's a good time of year to be a sports fan and a sports bettor, my friend.
Dude, we're going to get into college football in the huddle when the full show returns. But on this show, what we're going to do is we're going to break down the two Christmas Day games. Steelers and the Chiefs and the Texans and the Ravens. We're going to get to Ravens-Texans in a minute. Tony, BetMGM sent us some stats. You'll like this one. We're going to call this one the Grinch of the year, okay?
Okay.
The most profitable player for BetMGM Sportsbook on player props. Travis Kelce.
Ooh, I'm not a big Kelce fan.
He took money from the people.
Another reason not to like Travis Kelce.
And here's the thing. Here's the good one. The most profitable. This is crazy. It's the most random thing. I never would have guessed this if you gave me 3,000 guesses. The most profitable player props in the NFL were by Allen Lazard.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's where the public cashed the most. But here, let's get into some football, Tony. You want to do some KC versus Pittsburgh?
Let's do it, man.
Two teams going in different directions. And Tony, watching that KC game the other day, it looks like their biggest problem, which was their offensive line, might be fixed a bit now with Joe Thuney being bumped out to left tackle.
Yeah, it's looking like DJ Humphries isn't going to play in this one. Of course, we're taping this on Monday, so when we're talking about injuries, keep that in mind. I lean toward the over on this, Steve. I don't have the conviction on it. I wish it was like 42.5 instead of 43.5. I think both teams are going to be without big defensive starters in this one. Chris Jones, we don't know that he's ruled out for sure. But the Twitter doctors out there are saying it's a grade 1 calf strain. And when I say Twitter doctors, I don't sarcastically mean people who are pretending to be doctors or know-it-all on Twitter. I mean actual MDs out there saying a grade 1 calf strain. So that would be out 3 to 4 weeks for Chris Jones. So if the Chiefs are without him, and then Porter is likely missing for the Steelers, we saw him go down last week. Mm-hmm. This is two teams that are without two of their best defensive players. You have these games where it's really important for both of these teams, Steelers and Chiefs. They might be kind of emptying their bag, so to speak. You tend to see a little bit more pass plays in games like this. So that makes me lean more toward the over, but I haven't bet it yet. The Chris Jones thing is just huge. He is such a huge part of that defense. And I could see the Chiefs having a letdown performance. But Steve, what do we talk about every time the Chiefs play? You're not just the Steelers playing the Chiefs. You're playing the Chiefs and the NFL officials. And I each week, I started off the season saying this like half jokingly. Now I'm like, my percentages have changed, how much I'm joking about this. Now I'm like only 30% joking. Next week, I'm going to be like 20% serious. Like, it is getting awfully suspicious. And we'll see if there are some controversial calls here in this one against the Steelers for the Chiefs, because that's been the trend that we've seen this year. One stat that I think is really important for this game, Steve, the Steelers red zone offense, 30th best in the NFL. Chiefs red zone defense with Spagnuolo, 8th best in the red zone in the NFL. Last 3 games, though, the Steelers have improved in the red zone, 62.5%. That's about middle of the pack. So we'll see if the Steelers can improve in the red zone like they have the last couple of weeks. Otherwise, for the season, it's not a very good unit.
So I'll stick with that little trend you're talking about there. The Kansas City defense, in the last 5 games, 0 turnovers, 9 takeaways. Kansas City in general, 0 turnovers, 9 takeaways. That defense is figuring out they need Chris Jones. Another one, Kansas City haven't allowed someone to score 20 points in 4 straight. And the Steelers have put up like 17 and 13 in their last 2.
Yeah, you can't say enough about what Spagnuolo has done, man. That guy always, especially in the fourth quarter, he always comes up with like a cornerback blitz like we saw him do last week, just bringing pressure when the quarterback isn't expecting it, disrupting plays on a key third down. Definitely the best defensive coordinator in the league. I think the Steelers are going to have their hands full on this one.
So I found something kind of interesting for this game. And it's about George Pickens. So this Steelers offense, you can see it's just not the same without him.
Yeah.
Look at this stat. George Pickens, when he gets 50 yards or more in a game, the Steelers are 8-1 straight up. Like it's weird, but I mean, I don't know if some of these receiving weapons get the value towards the line that they should, considering the impacts that some of these guys have on it.
Yeah, Pickens is a beast. And the problem is, if somebody goes down, and Texans, we're going to talk about them. Tank Dell goes down. Yeah, but you still got Nico Collins. DK Metcalf goes down in Seattle. Yeah, but you still got Jackson Smith and Jigba. The Steelers don't have that number 2 guy. He is their passing offense. Really, the next guy in that offense is Pat Freiermuth. He's the next best target for Russell Wilson in that offense. So, yeah, he's going to be missed sorely for sure. The other interesting thing about this game is just how friggin' important it is for both teams, Steve.
Big time.
Big time. Schedule makers made these games for Christmas. You know what they had in mind. They had this in mind. 4 teams that are going to the playoffs in really important games in terms of the seeding and all that, division in the case with the Ravens and Steelers. Look at the Monday night game, Lions and 49ers. That was supposed to be an important game, right? That was supposed to be like an NFC championship preview. Turns out it's not such a good game after all. But with these games on Christmas, they're going to be fun to watch. I can't wait.
Interesting props to keep an eye on this one for me. They all kind of revolve around Hollywood Brown. I really think he was the missing piece of that Kansas City offense because they didn't have a deep threat. Xavier Worthy's nice. He's a good young player, but he doesn't have the experience that Hollywood Brown does. And I think Hollywood Brown's really going to open that Chiefs deep threat up that Worthy hasn't been able to do yet. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to play itself out, especially on the road in Pittsburgh, bonkers crowd. Any concerns with live betting these games being on Netflix? So I know we had a bit of a disaster during that Jake Paul Tyson fight. I know sportsbooks are up to date every second to replay, like they're faster than TVs. I get it. But if you're really lagging behind and you want to go place a bet, and then if you're just not really totally paying attention, because maybe you have some kids running around, maybe you're a few drinks in, a few mimosas, you're not as sharp as you'd like to be. Is there any concerns from your end from a betting standpoint with this being on Netflix?
For someone who's not paying very much attention, certainly. If you're looking at the book and you're not looking at what the time is telling you on the book and you're 3 minutes behind because it's on Netflix and it's lagging, then that could certainly be trouble. If you want to play it safe, make your bets during, commercial break or during the quarter, at halftime, that sort of thing. But fingers crossed that Netflix will work out for us, man. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, over under microphones that work throughout the game, I have it like 4.5.
Seriously, over under on the number of lags. I'll set it at 0.5. Do you think we're going to have a lag? Do you think we're going to have a little spinning circle of death in the middle of the screen?
Hammer down.
Really?
The over. Oh my God.
See, the reason I set the total so low is because they got so much criticism for all the lagging during the Paul Tyson fight. Like, it really took away from the event. Everybody on Twitter was all fired up about it. And so my thought process is they've learned from that, and whatever was broken, I'm not an IT guy, but whatever caused that to happen, they've had a lot of time now to fix it. So fingers crossed.
I think it was the 60 million people that tuned in that broke it. They just weren't expecting that volume, if we're being honest here.
Yeah.
All right, let's try to play Santa Claus here with this Ravens-Texans game, okay?
Yep.
We got to give out some winners this week, Tony. So, Ravens, 3.5-point favorites. Comes back at -120. And I'm going to break something else down for you, on this game as well. This is the later game, the 4:30 Eastern start. Houston, man, just as they were starting to look like they might have some stuff figured out, Tank Dell goes down. The Al-Shaair hit, he gets suspended. Like, where do you stand on this game?
I like the Ravens. I bet the money line earlier this week. For me, this is a game where they've got a huge injury advantage. You talked about Tank Dell. It's not just him. There's some other injuries, too, we can get into in a second. But one, huge injury advantage, and then a huge motivation advantage in this one. The Texans already have the division wrapped up. So are they really going to be, playing that hard to try to maybe get a 3 seed instead of a 4 seed? They've already got a home game wrapped up. The Ravens need this a lot more. This could be a game that decides for the Ravens whether they get a home game in the first round of the playoffs or whether they're on the road in the first round of the playoffs if they lose this game and the Steelers win. So I like the fact that the Ravens are going to be theoretically playing a lot harder in this one. I got the money line at -165 earlier in the week. Those injuries that I talked about for the Texans, no joke, man. Like when they release their pretend practice report, you know what I'm talking about when I say the pretend report on Sunday. It was loaded. Will Anderson, obviously Tank Dell, Fadu Kasi, Shaq Mason, Juice Scruggs, Jimmy Ward. The Jimmy Ward injury is huge because he's a safety that can play the slot, and Jalen Petrie was a safety that could play the slot that was already out for this one as well. So now you've got cluster injuries on defense for the Texans, and with Tank Dell out, remember they lost Stephon Diggs too. They also got cluster injuries on offense as well. So I like the Ravens to get the win in this one on the road against the Texans. I love these red zone percentages. Check this out. Texans, 27th best red zone defense in the NFL. That's not very good. Ravens, best red zone offense in the NFL, 72.88%. And I was looking at that, Steve, and I was like, that's pretty good. Like, how does that stack up against some of the recent season leaders in red zone offense? And you have to go back to 2020 to find a team that had a better red zone offense than the Ravens are playing right now. So they've got the best red zone offense in the last 4 years going up against the Texans' 27th best red zone defense. That's a huge, huge mismatch in the red area.
And you know what, for me, man, it really feels like the Ravens are figuring this thing out at the right time. Like, I'm not saying their defense is fixed, but their defense now compared to like week 10, leaps and bounds better, right? If that defense gets going, good luck stopping them. Honestly, I don't know how someone's going to do it. Because, I mean, I get the Lamar thing in the playoffs, whatever. We're not there yet. But Lamar's still in that MVP race, if depending on who you ask, of course. But you mentioned something. I was looking at PFF earlier, and the Ravens have the highest graded passing offense at 91.8. Houston, I mean, their pass rush is good. Derek Stingley looked all world against the Dolphins, but I mean, the Dolphins can do that to players.
Yeah.
But Mark Andrews now. This is the key piece, I think, for that offense, too, that is finally clicking. A touchdown in 4 straight games. And when Mark Andrews is rolling, that offense seems to hit its stride. Because Lamar loves him, right? So I was just looking at some of his props for this game as well. He's plus 150 at BetMGM and plus 155 for a touchdown at FanDuel. So, again, keep shopping around. See what other options are out there for you if you want to do that. But, Tony, here's where I want your help, okay? We talk about line shopping, right? So this game has a variance of lines at variable sportsbooks, okay? So here we have it at OddsShark. We have our matchup page at the very top of the screen when you get there to our site. Here we go, Tony. Here's the lines for this game. If I want to bet the Ravens, am I better off taking them minus 2.5 at minus 105 or minus 1.5 at minus 120 paying the extra vig?
All right, I'm looking here. You said Ravens minus.
Yeah, so if you look at FanDuel and then Caesars, because those will be the two ones to use.
Well, first of all, these are going to be outdated for people on Wednesday, right? Because there's 4s and 4.5s in the market now for the Ravens. But you just as a theoretical example, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And my choices are
FanDuel at minus 2.5 at minus 105, or give up the point but pay the extra vig at Caesars at minus 1.5. Like if I believe in the Ravens.
Right. Yeah, I like that 2.5. I like that 2.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If we were talking about going over a key number of 3, that would be a big difference there. But I like that 2.5 there.
That's why I wanted to check with you about, because it was really weird. So I wasn't sure how much a real capper like you would value that 1.5 and 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, games end on 2 sometimes. Games end on 3 about 15% of the time. So that's the big one that you want to be aware of, that key number at 3. You mentioned Mark Andrews. I'm actually going to stay away from the tight ends in this one, Andrews and Likely. The Texans rank 3rd in the NFL at defending tight ends. And so that's important to be aware of. That's according to FTNFantasy.com, their DVOA ranking. So they're really damn good at defending the position. And the Ravens have probably, would you agree with me, the best tight end tandem in the NFL? Is there a better one out there?
Tandem, yeah. I mean, it's, very rarely do teams have 2.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what tandem I do like? And it goes against everything we said earlier off the top of the show. Travis Kelce and Noah Gray. I made some money off Noah Gray this season. His props forever were always like 1.5 catches and like 8.5 or 12.5 yards. And I was like, all right, guess we're doing Noah Gray props today.
Yeah, but under the radar. That dude was a punchline at first, and he's like slowly started to become like a decent part of that offense. He was a little banged up last week, by the way. It's going to be interesting to see how healthy he is for Wednesday's game.
Also, we're going to wrap this up, but Tony, I've been beating the Bengals drum for a few weeks now. And I was looking around at some odds earlier. And we threw out Bengals plus 650 to make the playoffs on Friday's edition of the Huddle. I looked at Joe Burrow's MVP odds, plus 7,500. If the Bengals get in,
I think they were. When did we first mention this? I want to say they were 200 to 1 when we first brought it up on the show. So they leaked out a little bit.
That would have been like 3 weeks ago, probably.
Yeah, it's just so tough, man. Josh Allen is such a force. I feel like he's got this thing like all but wrapped up at this point. But the Bengals sneaking into the playoffs is interesting, Steve, because it has implications tied into this Chiefs-Steelers game. Because if the Chiefs win this game, they'll have the number 1 seed wrapped up, and they necessarily won't be trying very hard week 18 of the season when they play the Bengals. So this is a big game. If you're a Bengals fan, you are rooting for the Chiefs here because you want the Chiefs to have nothing to play for week 18.
And they're playing the Broncos. You just pulled a Steve and you said they're playing the Bengals. You got your B's mixed up.
Thank you.
Listen, man. What the hell did you put into that eggnog this morning, Tony? Like, come on, man. Your gig's up. Busted.
I wish I was drinking already. I wish.
Completely busted. That's how we found out.
Oh, my goodness. But the next, the Broncos-Bengals game is going to be fascinating. I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but that's going to be a fun one next week as well, week 17.
I mean, if the Chiefs have it wrapped up, it wouldn't surprise me if starters played a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could see that.
Just to lose all
because they've got the bye week coming up. They might want, we don't want to be too rusty. We don't want to take 2 weeks off, right? And
yeah.
That's essentially what they'd be doing if they rested everybody. So, yeah, I could see that.
Chiefs are hitting the stride at the right time, man. It's getting scary.
I hate to admit it. And that wide receiver room is really coming around, isn't it? Yeah. With Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins is getting, more familiar with his quarterback. It's getting a little scary, I got to admit.
Here we go again.
It's like we know what's going to happen, Steve. We know the Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl. It's in a place of your mind that you don't want to acknowledge it and you don't want to admit it. The Chiefs are going to be back in the Super Bowl for a three-peat. Somehow, some way, it's going to happen.
Tony, that's why we need Joe Burrow and the Bengals to get in the playoffs. They can go in there and get that job done at Arrowhead.
That defense just worries me. The Bengals defense is so free.
Man, allow yourself to believe. Allow yourself to...
The Christmas spirit, I'll allow myself to believe.
Wrap up a Bengals playoff appearance, put it in your stocking, open it Christmas morning, enjoy some football. Tony, you're the absolute best. Love you, man. Happy holidays. Thanks for this, buddy.
You too, brother. Take care, man.
Good luck with your bets.